Welcome to Draft Week, Miami Dolphins fans. I am Miami Dolphins columnist Omar Kelly, coming to you from the Miami Herald. And joining me is Isaiah Smalls for his very first NFL draft. Isaiah, are you excited about the 3 days of nonstop action for 10 selections? Maybe if you're lucky, 3 of them will make an impact on your team.
No, I'm excited. I think I spent the past couple of days. I talked to Jason Taylor on Friday. Talked to Aronde Gadsden today. There's obviously a lot of energy surrounding the draft. It's really one big crapshoot because you can do as much evaluation as you want, but if that guy gets in and is like, "Hey, Miami, let me party," you're screwed, right? So it's interesting. I go back to what Greer said, and something we talked about offline is look, not every guy is a fit for Miami, right? So it's about obviously doing your evaluation of who the player is on the field, but that's when that off the field stuff is important, right? So I'm looking forward to it. I want to see. I don't think I've ever watched a full draft from start to finish, so
okay.
that'll be great. I usually tune in for the first couple picks, see what my team's picking, and then I'm out. But
and you pay attention to what happened on day 3, later on in that week.
Yeah. So
Here, it's funny that you said that. The why does a player play the game is probably more important and critical now than it ever was.
Yeah.
It's not that now that these players are just getting money because this NIL and the new landscape of college football, they've been getting money from probably back to freshman year of high school at this point.
Yeah.
It's a situation now where what motivates them? What drives them? Are they pursuing that $30 million contract, or are they pursuing greatness? Will they be distracted by the South Florida streets and all these beautiful women around here who get their tentacles in you and create that distraction and and suck the life out of your career? Or will they find somebody that props them up? Or will they stay focused? Will they be motivated? Will the meshing with coaching staffs and chemistry work? All of these things are a reason why the Cam Smiths and the Channing Tindalls of the world don't exactly pan out. But you never know. Sometimes you get lucky and you get a Christian Wilkins and it just seamlessly works and makes sense for an organization. Well, we've got a couple of prominent storylines that are going to really take all the attention from the NFL draft. I think it's pretty much assumed that Cam Ward, the University of Miami quarterback, is going to go number 1. I still think there's a very small remote possibility that a team might trade up and get him. I know the Giants have a significant amount of interest in Cam Ward. The question is, will what's offered entice Tennessee? And I don't know if I could see that happening, but Shador Sanders is pretty much the storyline in this draft, him and his daddy. And where is Shador going to go? Is he a capable starter? I've consistently said I think he's going to be a good quarterback. He reminds me a lot of Tua Tagovailoa, but the arm strength is not top shelf. I'm not sure he can play in every stadium. I'm not sure he can play in Buffalo. I'm not sure he can play in the Meadowlands. Not that, every quarterback struggles with it, but it is a challenge. I think New Orleans, if they don't take him at 9, then you're going to be in a situation where he's there. He's there at 13 when the Dolphins make their selection. Isaiah, what do you do if Shador Sanders is sitting there at 13?
You pick someone else. And it's nothing to do with his talent specifically. I just want to just make this point real quick. And it happens every year, right? Anytime that there's a black quarterback in the process, they find something to ding him on. And this year it's been his personality, right? And so it's funny because I literally just got a little.
I don't think it's just black quarterbacks. I think it's any quarterback.
You think it's any quarterbacks?
Oh yeah, Jackson Dart. You could say the same thing about Jackson Dart. Jalen Milroe's getting beaten up a little bit. Some of these Tyler McCord, he's not getting the hype that he probably deserves after having a resurrecting season from Ohio State to Syracuse. Mm-hmm. This is not a very good quarterback draft, allegedly. But then again, you can look at the bad quarterback draft still produced Brock Purdy as the final pick. So, another bad quarterback draft introduced Dallas's quarterback, Dak Prescott, in I believe it was the 4th round. A good quarterback draft, you got Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round.
Wow.
Lamar Jackson was the last pick in his draft in 2018. So
last pick of the first round.
Yeah, last pick of the first round. Yeah. So you never know. So you're saying if Shador is there, I
don't want to pick him because I think that creates a controversy in Miami. And I think right now with the state of this team and how kind of fragile it is as they are looking. And no, I'm saying fragile because the vocal leaders that have been like the Clays, the Toronto Armstrongs, they're gone, right? So you have to, at this point in time, on April 21st, 5:25 p.m., like this is a fragile team. This is a fragile state. Like they need to, there needs to be vocal leaders. They need to get NFL ready, NFL starters in this draft. And so this seems in a very fragile state right now. And so I would not do that, especially if there's better talent available, because you don't need a quarterback. That's not a position of need for you, right? Like if Tua is your guy as he is because you gave him that huge contract, he's a fifth pay side quarterback in the league right now. You don't need that. You shouldn't even bat your eye twice at potentially even picking Shador Sanders. And that has nothing to do with his talent alone. It's just more so the state of this team. You need contributors that are going to play tomorrow. Like if there was an NFL game that Sunday, whoever they pick needs to be on that field, right? And so I would want a Will Johnson. And also like just being, because I think you're going to ask the same question about Ashton Genty. I would prefer, just because of this team and we don't know the future of this team, I would prefer to have NFL starters on the defensive side of the ball, more so on the offensive side of the ball, because I want to see what Anthony Weaver can do with the talent presented to him, right? If you give him a Will Johnson, right? You give him a Walter Nolan, give him these guys that are on the top end at their respective positions, right? Like I want to see what he's going to do with that talent versus McDaniel. And that's not knock on McDaniel. I just kind of want to see.
Okay, I mean, but I make the argument to you that scoring points is what wins in this league. I mean, I know the saying is defense wins championships, but if I'm Mike McDaniel, I'm trying to keep my job. I'm just personally, trying to keep my job. And I will ask you this question: there are two top flight talents that are available in the draft. Let's just say for some reason that Ashton Genty, the running back from Boise State, slides and falls to 13. I don't think it's going to happen because I think you got to get past not the Saints, but the Raiders.
Yeah.
You got to get past Dallas.
Yeah.
There are a lot of teams that are in need of running back help. And Genty, I think he's a top 5 talent in this draft. But the value on running backs is not very high. Let's say he slides to 13. You do what, Isaiah Smalls?
I'm calling to see if there's any team that really, really wants him. Don't get me wrong. I think Ashton Genty could be phenomenal in this offense, but the key word is could be, right? Because they need offensive line help. So I don't want to have Ashton Genty back there, Devon Achane back there running behind.
You got 10 picks. You can go get an offensive lineman in round 2, round 3, round 4.
I hope, and I know you told me to list like who are some guys that you hope the Dolphins grab. I have one guy specifically that I have circled as I think a day 2 pick that would be amazing for them, right? So I just don't want us to get too lost and oh my God, this name's here. We have to pick him. And
okay,
don't get me wrong.
So let me ask you your philosophical question here, because it's very interesting that you say this, because you're kind of contradicting yourself, much like Chris Greer is contradicting himself. Because I've covered Chris Greer now. This is our 10th draft together. Yeah. And for 9 of those drafts, we've been, oh no, we believe in BPA, select the best player available, especially in the early rounds, because that's how you build the best roster. This year, we're about facing, and we're saying we're leaving glaring voids and holes in this roster because we feel very confident that we're going to address them in the draft and we're going to get game-ready players. Okay, so that's a complete about-face turnaround 180. Are you a BPA guy or are you a draft for need guy?
I think you all. I came into this entire process as a draft for need guy. But I understood when we talked with Chris Greer at the combine, like he changed my mind a little bit when he was talking about BPA, right? Because you never know in this league what's going to happen, right? The Chop Robinson selection, for example, right? They did it on the surface. They didn't necessarily need an edge rusher, just looking at that team, right? And drafting him proved worthwhile. Why? Chubb didn't come back. Jalen Phillips was out for most of the year, right? And so here you had a player who first round talent that you could trot out there and just see what you got, right? Now, are there holes in Chop Robinson's game? Yes, but he also can get to the quarterback, right? And I think that opposing offenses found that out the hard way, right? And so I think it gives you an extra building block for the next year, right? And so I think it depends on who the player is. I think that's my answer to your question. It depends on who the player is. I prefer don't go best player available. Because I just think that there's too many holes on this team, right? Where I think that you can find premium talent at that 13th pick in one of those holes, right? That's how I feel. Okay. Because if Ashton Genty is there, right? You draft Ashton Genty, right? And, next round comes up, right? And another player who you're in love with, right, just so happens to be there, right? But you need an offensive guard. You still need that guard. Are you going to keep passing the buck? Is it just going to be like, next round we'll address this. Next round we'll address this.
I have always looked at it from this standpoint, and I philosophically believe in BPA. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry if and it depends on how I stack my board. And the Dolphins, they do marry need with the player ranking, but you got to stick to your player ranking. If let's say there are 10 elite players in this draft, and all but one of those 10 players, you think these players are going to be Pro Bowl players, you have to take the elite player that's going to have the best career. Even if it's Ashton Genty, think about it from this standpoint. Devon Achane, his contract's up in another 2 seasons. He's going to be shaking you down at the end of this year. What's supposed you have somebody who you can compete with him and sort of get a better evaluation of where Ashton Genty is. You can't lock yourself into, we got to commit ourselves to Devon Achane. What's supposed Devon Achane tears an ACL in week 4? Clearly, knock on wood and hope that doesn't happen. Yeah. Then what is your season absolutely flushed down the drain? You can't do that. You can't approach it like that. So you have to build the best roster. Now, with that said, there are glaring holes in this roster, and you have to understand and you have to pay attention to what the ebbs and the flows of this draft is. How deep is the offensive guard? How deep is the cornerback position? How deep is defensive tackle? Defensive tackle happens to be one of the deepest positions in this draft. Maybe you could wait on that a little bit, and the difference between the player you get at 13 would not be so drastically different than the player you get at 48 or 98. So it'll be interesting to see how they play this. I love the whole theory and process that everybody has that, we need to trade down so we can get more picks. Well, that's the philosophy. That's the approach every year. It doesn't work like that. You have to have a team that wants to move up to come get somebody. And if they don't have somebody that they want to come get, you can't make that trade work. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. The Dolphins clearly need offensive line help. But are you going to sacrifice the opportunity to take a game-changing, difference-making back, this generational back, if you do believe that Genty is that? Or are you going to sacrifice taking the Tyler Warrens if you believe he's a generational tight end? I personally don't believe he's a generational tight end. I wouldn't have him there at my 13th selection, but you got to stick to your evaluations and be true to it.
I agree with you. And I think, 2 of the positions you mentioned, running back and tight end, I think this is a deeper draft for those 2 positions too.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't mind necessarily seeing if there is somebody, a team who loves Ashton Genty. I wouldn't mind just poking around, just being like, hey, who's interested in this pick, right? Because I think, there's we talked about it, the Trevion Hendersons, those guys that are like, okay, like you're not gonna go in the first round, but like, look, like second, third round, like you could be that guy, right? So I don't want to like because of the names, right? Because I think a lot of times, fans mostly get caught up in names. Absolutely. And so, like, just because Ashton Genty is there, it's like, oh my God, and let's go grab him. Like, no, like, let's calm down. Let's see if anyone else wants some more, because there are running backs in this draft that I think have that same ability. And to me, like I said, Trevion Henderson is one of those guys that has that breakaway speed. Does he have issues in his game? For sure. But to me, when we saw that look on McDaniel's face when he ran that 40, like there's something there. So I just think that, like, especially at a position like running back, right? Don't get me wrong. Saquon Barkley, what he did for the Eagles changed the game, right? And I think, the price on running backs has been relatively low as of late. And I think this could be a draft to change that. But let's not panic and make these drastic decisions when it comes to the draft.
I saw Mike Tannenbaum, the Dolphins' former czar, vice president of football operations, who used to be Chris Greer's boss. He put out a stat earlier today in terms of the number of positions that were selected in the last 5 drafts early. Wide receivers, offensive tackles, quarterbacks, defensive ends, and cornerbacks are nearly selected twice as much as linebackers, running backs, offensive guards, centers, tight ends, defensive tackles, and safeties.
Wow.
And and in the first round, obviously. And it just shows you teams select the premium positions in the first round, and they can wait on the inside linebackers. I looked at I did a positional breakdown in the Miami Herald for every position, and you can find that online. And I looked at the inside linebackers that were drafted. For a decade, there were 18 inside linebackers drafted in the first round. That's 10 years, 18 inside linebackers. And I would argue to you that only about 6 of them were good. And I was like, man, that's a hell of a hit-miss ratio. Right there, where you got a lot of Zaven Collins and Jamin Davises and Isaiah Simmons and Kenneth Murray's and very few Jordan Brooks and Patrick Queens and Roquan Smith. So these teams study these things and they understand where the ebbs and flows are. And here's the important part. I don't think you draft a guard at 13. I think you draft a tackle and you see if he can transition to guard for maybe a year or two. Also, people are not factoring in the fact that Austin Jackson, he's going to be 10 months into his rehab by the time they start the season opener of his meniscus injury. Is that really a safe proposition, safe bet that you want to make that he's going to – remember, Isaiah Wynn was the same way, and we projected that he'd be healthy for the start of the season, and that man didn't come back till mid-season. You can't leave yourself exposed with a Keon Smith out there as your offensive tackle. You've kind of hedged your bets, which is why I think that a Keon Smith or a Greg Zabel kind of has to be one of the front runners or one of the main considerations over
Keon Smith. Who is it? Wait, that's not the right name.
No, Keon Smith is who's on the Dolphins. Keon Smith is on the Dolphins roster. Yeah. I said Kelvin Banks.
Kelvin Banks. Okay.
Yeah, Kelvin Banks, Josh Simmons, Greg Zabel. I definitely think that I don't think they're going to go with Simmons because he's got the injury history. But Greg Zabel, I'm hearing his name a lot as a possibility at 13. I definitely think. I definitely think he's going to be selected probably in the early 20s.
That's what I was thinking. Early 20s. I like Greg Zabel. Like I saw when I saw him at the I told you this when I saw him at the Senior Bowl, he was one of the few people that stood out to me. He was blocking everything. They lined him. He could go up and down the offensive line, center, guard, tackle. And I liked him best at guard, but I know there's people, over there at, seeing him at tackle, think he can do there. So I think 20s is more so his projected area. 13, it might be a little bit of a reach. There might be some better guys there. It depends.
Here's the thing I say about reaching. And I remember I learned this lesson from it was Jimmy Graham. This is a story that was relayed to me back in the Bill Parcells era. The Dolphins had a written and pen plan to select Jimmy Graham, a former University of Miami basketball player, in the 4th round. He only played 1 year college football, super raw player. They were going to pick him in the 4th round. That was the game plan. Well, the New Orleans Saints just so happened to have a game plan of selecting him in the 3rd round. And here's the thing. If that player pans out and develops, who cares where you selected him?
That's true.
And I give you another example of this. Do you remember what Kansas City had to trade to Buffalo Bills to get Patrick Mahomes?
Nope, I do not.
What about what Baltimore had to trade to get back in the 1st round to get Lamar Jackson?
It was. I just was looking at the terms for that one. It was, I think, a 2nd rounder, and I don't remember that. 2nd rounder, maybe a player. I don't know. Keep going.
Listen, no, if a trade pans out for you and that player becomes a star, nobody cares what you traded away. Nobody even thinks about it. So if you like a guy who cares if you overdraft him? If Greg Zabel is your guy, he impressed you at the Senior Bowl. You loved his personality. You loved his medical comes in clean, and you think he could play all 5 positions on your offensive line seamlessly. Take him. Take him at 13. As long as he pans out and he's a good NFL player, who cares where you selected him? It'll be interesting to see what their approach is. I wanted to ask you about your offensive line. Like, what offensive lineman do you have your eye on, and who do you think is the best fit for the Miami Dolphins?
I think because I had to be realistic with just with placement, to your point. Like, I don't necessarily believe in taking a guard at 13, right? So I'll try to be realistic with the picks and everything. So I had, honestly, might be a little bit home cooking right now, but I was a fan of Donovan Jackson, man, from Ohio State. Like, he's a guy that played most of his career at guard, but after Simmons' injury, slid to left tackle. And I mean, just won a national championship. I'm second team All-American. He specifically specializes in outside zone. What do the Dolphins love to run? He's a 3-year starter, second team All-American. I mean, that's someone that I had my eye on the second round.
Okay. And you can have your eye on him in the second round, but he could very well be taken before you pick at 48.
That's very true.
Now, are you going to trade up to go get him?
Would I trade up to go get him? It depends what the asking price is. And it depends. I don't think I want to, and I don't want to hemorrhage my future totally for him. But I do think he could be a good player. I think he's going to be a serviceable player, and like we said earlier, that positional flexibility is something that the Dolphins very, very much so value, right? And so that's somebody that I think. And I mean, he comes from a winning culture. I think you have to look. Would I trade up for? It depends what the asking price is. It depends what the asking price is. For sure. Now in the first round, obviously, like if a Will Campbell drops to you, yeah, 100%. Like that's we're taking that talent. Like, and we're not thinking twice, right? But because that is a player whose need kind of falls in with us, and he will be at that. Depending on if he slides 13, he will be the best player available at the time.
Absolutely. Same thing with Membu. I think Membu, the offensive tackle from Missouri, he's a right side only player, and in fact, he's a right tackle most of his career. I'm not necessarily sure if that's the right fit for them, but that he's athletic. But the film doesn't necessarily match up with what his athleticism is. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, how that works for the Miami Dolphins. I like Tyler Booker, but I understand that he's not exactly a great fit for the Miami Dolphins. But I make this argument on his behalf. While the athleticism and the strength doesn't exactly show what's on the field, what's on the film is he's a bulldozer. He moves people. He instantly turns people. I don't think he's a right fit for this Dolphins team, but I definitely like him as a player. But I think if it's not Kelvin Banks, the Ohio State offensive lineman, I'm going with Zabel. I think he can get the job done. Where are you from a defensive tackle standpoint? What is your thought process there?
I'm going right back to someone that really impressed me at the Senior Bowl, Walter Nolan. I know he's a bit undersized, right? But he was dominant. And he was quick, and at the scene. But it reminded me, and I know, like, look, I understand that this comparison, people are gonna, yell and scream, blah blah blah. But I saw Aaron Donald when I was watching, because he's undersized, he's quick, and he was going. So I like Walter Nolan. He was a finalist for the Outland Trophy, the first team All-American. I like him. Now 13 again. It goes back to the question you said earlier, or to the point you made earlier. Like, is that a reach? Who knows? Like, a lot of mock drafts that I see with him, he's in the 20s as well, 20s and late teens, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, like,
here's the thing about him: he didn't work out at all. Mm-hmm. So you don't have a strength metric, you don't have a 40 time. I think he did one thing, and that's a little bit troublesome, but I know this is the new culture of the NFL, where players are now basically saying to teams like, "You got film,
that's real.
You got film. Figure it out whether you want me or you don't want me." And it's such a power move by these players, and a lot of them probably realize that sometimes they're better off going to the better teams than they are being selected super high, because the better you are, the more money you'll make. Better you are, and the better your team is, the more money you'll make in on the second contract. Let's get into players that we like in this 2025 draft. You got your list, Isaiah?
Yeah. I was just naming players off my list. I didn't know.
Okay. I will say I'm a Will Johnson guy. I know there's some risk associated with his hamstring and turf toe, and you don't have a clock speed. But there's a lot of play from him that reminds me of Xavier Howard and probably maybe a little bit of Asante Samuel. Just a great zone matchup guy. Am I worried that he'll have to spend half the season in a walk-in boot just to get over this turf toe? Yes, I am. But, you know, the talent is there. He showed it to you on film for the 2 years that he played. I also, as I said, Tyler – I like Tyler Booker, the offensive lineman from Alabama. I don't think he's necessarily a great fit for the Miami Dolphins, but I think a team like Baltimore is going to end up taking him, and he's going to be a perennial Pro Bowler, and you'll be like, why didn't we take that guy again? That's one of the players that I really do like in this draft. And Alfred Collins, the defensive tackle from Texas, very productive, good nose tackle. I think he will be there. In the second, I think there's going to be a run on defensive tackles in the second round, and I think that he's going to be one of those players that you absolutely have to be aggressive and bullish about going to get. Walter Nolan is a very intriguing name. I think there's a little bit of fear factor associated with what you see there. Another player I like is Isaiah Bond, the wide receiver from Texas. There are some people who believe that he is going to slide into the third day because he's got some luggage that comes with him. And you know, I take a risk on players like that. I know I'm aggressive like that. So he's definitely one of those players where if he's sliding, I'm targeting him on the third day because I believe that he can make a difference for my franchise. And then another third day guy is Xavier Truss, who is basically a right side offensive guard, right tackle player from Georgia. He's going to be a third day guy. He looks ugly from a metric standpoint in terms of how he works out. But when you watch the film, he's just absolutely bulldozing and moving people. So, though, and then I like a linebacker from South Carolina, Demetrius Knight, just a heat-seeking missile. I don't think the Dolphins have any player like that where he can sniff out the plays and runs and go out there and go get it. And then there's a safety, Billy Bowman Jr. from, I believe it's Oklahoma, who I don't think they're going to address safety because according to Greer, they think they have their two starters on the roster. And I think this is safety is a position that you could draft late. And you never know what you're going to end up with. So those are the players that I like in this draft. Some of them.
Yeah, I got. So I'm agreement with you on Will Johnson. He's a ball hawk, and I think like for a team that didn't necessarily generate that a lot of turnovers from the cornerback position, like you should be looking for someone like that. And so he's there. You should grab him. Injury is definitely a concern, but like let's just pray that he gets the right trainers down here. He gets right. We both have talked about Louis Riddick and how we're a fan of him and his evaluations. And so he put out a list of some players yesterday, and I went back, looked at one of them, and then did a little bit of digging on the film. And Andrew Makuba, the safety out of Texas, that is one of Louis Riddick's favorite players. Probably a round 3 guy. But I don't know if you remember I think it was the SEC championship, the hit that he had on Gunnar Stockton that blew the guy's head off. I don't know if you remember that, but it was that we're talking about heat-seeking missiles. There's that guy right there. He's a little bit undersized. I think he's like 5'11 3/4, but he has 4.45 speed, right? So he's fast, can move. I think he makes up for a little bit of the size with that speed. And he had 5 interceptions last year. Like that you can't sneeze at that. I think that was like the 4th highest in the FBS, right? So I like him. And then I gotta go Mason Taylor, right? I know the Dolphins, you know, they're looking for another. They might need another tight end. I think you gotta take that gamble on that bloodline of of Zach Thomas and Jason Taylor, right?
I don't know if I want to put him in that pressure cooker though. I actually grew up watching that kid grow up inside the Dolphins locker room.
That's fine. I think it depends on certain people when it like there are certain players that's like, look, that will forever be in their dad's shadow, right? And like, or in their, family shadow, right? And that bothers them and they don't want to be like that. I'm going to take a chance and say that Mason Taylor would embrace that pressure only because just from the conversation that I had with his dad over the weekend, right? Like he is a guy who is a worker. He doesn't care about anything else. He just cares about football, right? And I think that's a big plus for me. And plus you think, and I've listened to him talk about who some of his favorite players are. You know what the guy that he looks up to the most is?
Who?
George Kittle. And the reason why I like that is because George Kittle is another guy that isn't as like in the era of Travis Kelce, Brock Bowers, where the tight end can essentially become like the leading pass catcher on that team. George Kittle is a guy who can lead his team in pass rushing and pass catching and doing all that stuff and yards, all that stuff. But he also likes to block, right? And that's something that Mason Taylor does. Like he's a willing blocker. Plus he's young. The kid's only 20 right now. Right. So I'm going to bank on his development, bank on his ability to grow. He got a little bit of Dallas Goedert in him, someone that can block and catch the ball. I think why not add that to this offense?
A lot of pressure, though, following your daddy and your uncle's footsteps on a team that they play for. But that could be the key to having a successful draft. You got to find players who want to be great. Yeah. They've clearly seen the pressure. They've clearly been in this environment. It'll be interesting to see if that's a selection. I hear Mason Taylor's a top 50 pick, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. On that note, we will be back this week with Dolphins in Depth, giving you more draft coverage. We'll try to be here after every single draft day, giving you our thoughts and our recap. On that note, we will see you later this week.